Hello, this is a video to go over the settings that we see here in Entry View Right panel. All right, what do we even mean by Entry View Right panel? Well, let's take a look. So here is our client record, and we can go to our point in time. This protection order point in time works well. And so now this is what I would say is the entry view for a point in time. So we can click around through here and say, okay, here's this entry, here's that entry. And so the entry view right panel is what we're seeing here. This is the right panel. So we've got 6 settings for just that right panel. Oh my, let's take a look at what this is. So the first thing is order by entry date oldest to newest. All right, so we can also say newest to oldest. The default is oldest to newest, and that's because it was our understanding that people kind of, when they're seeing a list of entries, they like to see it kind of chronologically listed like that. If you do have it set to oldest to newest like this, do know that like when you go to this record, it will automatically scroll down to this most recent entry so that you're not having to do lots of weird scrolling around, but it's just kind of, it comes straight like this, and you don't have to, it's in chronological order like that. But if you don't like it like that, you want it to be newest to oldest, that's fine too. Switch that around, and the newest one gets ordered to the top. Okay, let's take a look at the other ones here. We also have added / updated date, oldest to newest, and same newest to oldest. And so what this does is when we're looking at it before, it was sorting based off of the main point in time entry date. So on this example, the main entry date is date requested. It could be called anything for you, but it's just, this is the kind of pivotal date for this entry, and it's just sorting based off of those dates. But now that I've changed it to sort based off of date added, date updated, it's basically sorting based off of which entries were touched most recently. So that now this list of dates looks all weird here, because it's like, wait a minute, the 2022, and then we switched to this one. And this is just because this November 29th, 2022 entry, somebody did something to this entry, made some sort of change, whatever, at some point after these ones here. And if you're looking at this being like, well, why would I ever want that? I would actually happen to agree with you. This was just added for a very specific purpose, and if that's not your, it would make a lot of sense if you would never encounter a purpose that would require that. So let's stick that back to our default, and let's talk about our focus variables. So when we were looking at the entries over here, we just saw a bunch of dates, and even if this was in a normal chronological order, it would be understandable if you were like, well, I need some more context here to like figure out which one of these entries has what I'm looking for. And that's why we can add in these focus variables. So we can choose 2 if we want. You don't have to have 2. Sometimes all you really do have is 1. Only certain variable types will show up in this list, ones that can be easily condensed into kind of a quick little line like that. So let's say protection order type and court. And now that we reload this, we can see, okay, September 8th, 2020 was this. And then November 29th, that one was that. And that makes it a lot easier for us to pick out which entries we want to be looking at. All right, let's keep going on here. We can also say show the staff name along with the focus. And when we do that and reload, we can see any entry where there's a staff member attributed to it. We also see that person's name here. So it's kind of like this little bonus third focus variable if you want it. What it's looking at is it's looking for a variable that has a really specific variable ID. ID underscore user is what that variable ID needs to be for the system to recognize it as the staff field that should count inside of here. Because you could have like all kinds of different staff for like, oh, staff who reviewed it, staff who initially did this thing. But the system needs there to be a really clear distinction of here is the staff field and it must have that variable ID. Contact us if you need us to switch an ID for you to have it recognized as the staff field. If that point in time you have does not have a staff field that is recognizable in that way, you will not see this setting at all. You just won't see that row. And next we have show data completion score. So let's turn this on and reload. And now we see, okay, this entry is 50% completed, this entry is 75, this entry is 100% completed. So depending on what kind of information you're collecting here and what you have set for your importance settings, you would want to do that. Okay, and then let's talk about the last one, which was categorize / group by. So here it's just, there's no grouping at all. We're just, here's our past entries, done. But we can now say categorize by protection order type. And now when we reload, we see here's all of our temporary orders of protection grouped together like this. Here's all of our permanent orders of protection. We just have one. And so it's taking a look at, what do we do? This one, at the options of this variable and adding a section for each of these options. Notice that we only had 2 sections over here, but there's 4 options in this variable. And that's because it's only showing the options that we have any entries for. It's not going to list every single one and say like no entries for ones that there's no entries of that type, because that would be messy. Okay, it's now that we're grouping here, we the order of the entries inside of here is going to follow the same order settings that we did for here. And then the last thing is to say that now this is pretty redundant that we have that as our focus variable, because it's like, yes, temporary order protection. They're all temporary order protection. Why do you keep reminding me? So instead, you probably want to pick a different focus variable or have no focus variable at all. So maybe we care about the status now. And now that we reload, this is now much more relevant. So here's our temporary orders of protection. This one was denied, and we're missing the court, so on and so forth. Basically, point in time, right panel utopia at this point. This is what we want. But that's not to say that you should go through and set all these as yes and do all the things for every point in time. Every situation is different. This protection order one was just a good way of showing you kind of how all these things can be used in one example. All right, if any of this didn't make sense, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know if you need help figuring out what works best in your situation. All right, thanks.